Joining me today is Joe Del Bosque Jr. He's the president of Del Bosque Farms in Los Banos, California. Now, Farmer Joe, he grows organic cantaloupe, honeydew, almonds, asparagus, cherries. He's got a 2,000-acre family-owned farm on the Great West Side of the San Joaquin Valley. Joe, welcome to Brad Show Live. Tell us all about your farm first.
Well, it's good to be here, Brad. My farm is similar to a lot of farms in California where we grow fruits, nuts, and vegetables. We provide for a lot of the country. They go all over the U.S., go to chain stores across the U.S., and some go to Canada also.
Last year, there was a story that circulated in the news that approximately $13 million worth of crops out in California went unpicked. They rotted in the fields because the farmers out there did not have staff to go and pick them.
Well, our labor shortages have been going on for a while, and they certainly aren't getting any better. If anything, they're probably gradually getting worse. We're not getting new workers coming into our workplace, and our local native-born people don't want to come and work in the fields, so we're largely dependent upon people from somewhere else.
So how much of a percentage of the people who work in your farm are not Americans?
98%.
98% of the people who are picking, and this is not just your farm. You're not out of the ordinary. Would you say that that's a typical farm, or do you have more immigrants than most?
I probably have more than most, and I think farmers that do fresh fruits and vegetables that have to be picked by hand, those have a very high percentage of non-Americans.
Right.
Those that have mechanically harvested crops may have fewer, but still have immigrants.
So there's a problem getting immigrants to come and literally pick the produce in the fields. What's contributing to all of this, in your opinion?
Well, a couple of things. You know, we did have a lot of deportations in the last 10 years, first of all. And then we had a lot of tightening on the border, kind of discouraging people from coming across. That and our workforce is aging, and there's not a lot of young people coming in to replace them. Also, our farm workers' children do not want to work in the fields. They have the benefit of their parents supporting them and sending them off to college, and that's great. We love that. But they're not going to come back and take their parents' place.
There's a lot of people unemployed in America right now. Why can't the argument would be that you would see from many people who favor very strict immigration, go hire an American?
They just won't come out. We make our work available to anybody that will show up. All they have to do is show up here, and we'll give them work, but they don't come out. We actually go into town and try to recruit people. And sometimes we get a few, and out of 300 people, we may get, 5 or 10 people that way.
So now there is something called an H-2A program, which is seasonal agricultural workers. And some would say, well, there's a legal way to go find immigrants. Go do the H-2A program. Why don't you do that?
It's not very easy. First of all, you have to be able to transport them. You have to house them. You have to make sure they're fed. You have to guarantee them 75% of their wages, whether they work or not. It's a very cumbersome program, and not very many farmers have housing and transportation for their workers.
So the smaller farmers really can't do it. It would only be the big farms who could actually do it.
That's exactly
right.
And
from an immigration standpoint, you got to be able to prove you're not taking a job away from an American worker. You got to go through the Labor Department, then you got to go through the Immigration Service, and then there's a quota on the number of people that you could actually even bring in. You may not even be able to bring in as many as you want. It is a huge, cumbersome process, an expensive process. It's time-consuming, it's expensive, and it takes a long time to get your workers in, and sometimes even the workers don't get there in time to harvest the crops because the immigration process doesn't work the same way as Mother Nature.
No, that's correct. And I saw that happen last year with a friend of mine who picks tomatoes. She's a labor contractor, and she started working on H-2A months before the tomatoes became ripened and it was time to pick, and those folks were still not here.
Right.
And she didn't know what to do. So I think they probably lost some of the crop at the beginning.
So what do you think should be done? You're an outspoken critic of what's going on right now. You are living this every day. You're dealing with immigrants every day. You see them as human beings. What needs to be fixed?
The first thing that needs to be done is we need to provide legal status to those people who are working right now. The people that are out there in the field right now, they're driving tractors, they're irrigating and so forth. We got to find a way to give them legal status. Then we have to have a guest worker program that makes it easier to bring people in for the season. Because right now we can grow all of our crops with 20 people, but it takes 300 to pick them. So we have a surge of demand for workers in the summer that we can't fill here. So we have to be able to bring people in at least for that season and then allow them to go back home.
I agree with that. The way the system works now is the people are lucky enough to get here. They don't want to leave because they don't know if they'll ever make it back again. So it's actually that we are keeping them almost in jail in America. And I would say most people want to be able to go back and forth. And our stupid politicians don't allow it. The other thing I wanted to say was, because I'm playing the devil's advocate. Okay, you give the farm workers legal status. What's to say they're going to continue to work on the farm? How do we know they're not going to go take my job? I'm working in a store, or I'm in an office, and they got their green card now, and they don't want to pick apples anymore, and they want to go take my job in the office. What would you say to Americans about that?
And that will probably happen. I think some of them will go off into other jobs. They could possibly go to construction, because sometimes construction has demand for people. So I think that we have to have a sort of a replenishment program where those people either they move on to something else or they retire and somebody has to come in and take their place. So we have to have a sort of replenishment program to replace those folks that migrate away or into retirement.
It seems like it's a lot of common sense, and I don't understand why people can't understand that. You put yourself out there and you're saying, you know what, we got to be able to do this, we got to be able to change the laws, and you have a big business, and maybe somebody with a big business would say, I'm not going to say anything about immigration. I don't need anybody looking my direction. Why do you come out and do all of this?
Yeah, a lot of farmers would not speak about this,
right.
And I do stick my neck out there because somebody has to. And I feel that I have been doing this already so long that I certainly have a lot to lose, but it has to be done. And folks out there in the public, in the American public, need to hear it from the farmer that produces their food. And they need to know that we need these people to pick those crops. The same people that have been picking those crops forever, we need to do something to give them legal status so that they don't have to work in fear.
Let me ask you a question. And this is on my show a lot. Everybody always says, kick out the immigrants, they're illegal, they're criminals, until the ones you actually meet. Do you hear from farmers saying, the guys who work for me, the immigrants who work, they're all good guys, they should be able to stay? In the netherworld over here, they're saying everybody else should get out of here. Do you get to see that also with some of your colleagues, farmers, that they like their employees, but everyone else should get kicked out?
Well, I think that most farmers really appreciate their workers. They're hardworking people. They're they're members of our communities. They have kids. They're just like us. They have families. They have needs and so forth. And they're very productive people. Now, obviously, there's some criminal elements, just like in any society. And I think any farmer and even any legitimate farm worker would say, get rid of those people. Our workers don't want these criminals here. They just as well get them kicked out. So the hardworking people, the people who have been part of our communities, we have to do something about incorporating them into our communities.
I agree wholeheartedly. Very well said. Farmer Joe Del Bosque Jr., I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on the show. We have Sam the Groundhog here. He wanted to come on and, talk to you a little bit, but I said, no, I don't think farmers and groundhogs get along very well. How are the groundhogs treating you out there in California?
Well, we'd like the groundhog to come out and see his shadow more often in California, because we're always short of rain here. And, speaking about concerns of farmers, water is, if not number one, it's number two between water and immigration. So we would invite your groundhog to come out here and see his shadow and go back under.
All right.
But do it early, like in January.
I think he's going to want to take a trip. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. For more Bradshaw Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.